What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into Resident Evil 9, Requiem, the hypothetical finale to Capcom's modern saga, and breaking down exactly where the story ends and what becomes of every major character, from Chris Redfield and Jill Valentine, to Rose Winters, Ada Wong, and more. Based on everything we know from the series' themes, lore, and character arcs, here's the most educated, lore-accurate prediction of where Resident Evil ends up after Requiem. Let's get started. The state of the world after Requiem. By the end of Resident Evil 9, Requiem, the global bioterror era is collapsing. The BSA, Blue Umbrella, and dozens of covert groups have been outed as corrupt or compromised. Bioweapons are no longer isolated to secret labs. Entire regions have been shaped by outbreaks, mutated ecosystems, and centuries-old parasitic lineages. And the franchise reaches a turning point, a world that cannot survive another outbreak, and heroes who are simply too old, too broken, or too morally exhausted to continue the fight. Chris Redfield's final arc. Chris Redfield's entire journey, from Resident Evil 1 to Requiem, has been defined by trauma, guilt, and an obsession with ending bioterror once and for all. Requiem's story ends with Chris destroying the last major bioweapon faction, exposing the BSA's corruption publicly, and handing control of anti-biohazard operations over to a new global coalition. But the real ending? Chris finally retires. He doesn't get a heroic death or a tragic sacrifice. Capcom tends to avoid killing its oldest icons. Instead, Chris becomes an advisor, stepping away from combat entirely. Where Chris ends up, lives in a quiet coastal town off the grid, still trains new recruits occasionally, battles PTSD, but begins to heal for the first time, leaves the field to the next generation. For Chris, Requiem isn't just the end of a story, it's the end of a 30-year war. Jill Valentine's fate. Jill is one of the most complicated characters in the franchise. Her mind and body were altered by Wesker and the P-30 system, and the long-term consequences have always lingered. After Requiem, Jill finally gets closure. Requiem reveals that the P-30 left permanent neurological scars. Jill has been dealing with sensory fragmentation and identity issues for years, and she fears becoming a liability to the people she loves. But the ending gives her something she's never had. Peace. Where Jill ends up, withdraws from the front lines, begins long-term therapy and recovery, opens a rehabilitation training program for bioterror victims. Lives close to Chris, but not romantically, just lifelong partners in survival. Jill doesn't die. She finally learns how to live. Rose Winters becomes the central figure. Resident Evil Village and its DLC established Rose Winters as a new kind of protagonist, a hybrid human molded by the Megamycete, making her uniquely resilient to future biohazards. Requiem completes her transformation. After Requiem, Rose is the only living person resistant to multiple bioagents, a symbolic end to the Umbrella era, and the natural successor to Chris Redfield's legacy. But Capcom avoids making her a superhero. Her powers are limited, controlled, and sometimes dangerous. Where Rose ends up, becomes a leader in the new global anti-biohazard task force, bridges the gap between human science and mold-based biology, takes on the mentor role Chris once had, sets up the future of the series without relying on the old cast. Rose is the true protagonist of the post-Requiem era. Ada Wong's ending. Ada Wong's story has always been one of duplicity, spy, double agent, survivalist. Requiem gives her the ending she's been owed. She uncovers evidence that the last remaining underground faction has been manipulating global outbreaks for decades, playing every side, including her. For the first time, Ada picks a side. Where Ada ends up, betrays her shadow employers permanently, delivers final intelligence to Rose and the new organization, survives, but disappears once again, leaves a message hinting that she may finally be done running. Ada lives because Capcom will never kill their most popular wildcard, but her future is hers alone. Ethan Winters' legacy. Ethan remains physically dead, but his influence defines Requiem's emotional core. The Megamycete memories that once revived him are finally destroyed. No more consciousness echoes. No more potential clones. Requiem gives Ethan the one thing his story always revolved around: a final, irreversible rest. Where Ethan ends up, dead, but honored globally, Rose keeps his wedding ring. His sacrifice is the last catalyst that ends the modern era of bioterror. Ethan's story is complete. The world after Requiem. So what does the Resident Evil world actually look like after all this? Bioterrorism isn't gone, but it's finally manageable, ***. Requiem ends with most major viral lineages eliminated. The megamycete completely wiped out. Umbrella's legacy dismantled. New global regulations on biological research. The world entering a biohazard Cold War rather than full catastrophe. It's not a happy ending, but it's the most hopeful one this series has ever had. Who dies in Requiem? Based on franchise patterns, these characters likely do not survive Requiem. Lucas-like antagonist / new villain dead. Capcom usually kills the arch villain of each game. A BSA corrupted leader dead. A major twist death, exposing the truth. One supporting character from RE7 / RE8 era dead. Possibly a new partner introduced for Rose or Chris. But the big fan favorites? Chris, Jill, Claire, Leon if he appears, Ada, Rose. All survive. Capcom avoids killing icons unless absolutely necessary. Resident Evil 9, Requiem serves as the end of the bioweapon age story. The conclusion of Chris and Jill's 27-year arcs. The emotional closure of Ethan's saga. The passing of the torch to Rose Winters. And the last chapter in the Umbrella legacy. It doesn't end the franchise. It begins a new one. And that's where the world and characters end up after Resident Evil 9 Requiem. A conclusion that respects the lore, honors the classics, and sets the stage for an entirely new generation of horror.